Good morning from Council Chambers. We have just turned the web streaming and YouTube on. So just for Escribe, if you can go into your April 4th Escribe agenda. And if you're joining virtually, it's today's invite.
Good morning, everyone. We are resuming our meeting back, and I will at this time acknowledge that that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Sotu, Blackfoot, and Korasu, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. And I will do a quick roll call. Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
And Councillor Jans.
Good morning.
Good. And we were on item 6.7, financial assistance for economic loss due to major construction draft policy. And we have a number of speakers in the queue, and I will go to Councillor Knack next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just realized we didn't have the motion on the floor, so I was happy to put the motion on the floor.
Okay. I need a seconder.
Second.
Second, Councillor Cartmel. We have a motion on the floor now. So, Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Sure, I won't take too much time. I know while we did chat about it, we have some further questions and discussion here. Just very briefly, when we did talk about it at committee, we had a representative from Canadian Federation of Independent Business talk about the value of something like this, of advancing a program. We also had some representatives coming from the business improvement areas that were there to talk about what they need to help with different construction challenges. And as we heard, we heard from Mr. James from Stony Plain Road, a business improvement area, that, ideally they'd love to even see something that's more proactive. And while I think that would be something good to work towards, this felt like a good start to begin to address some challenges. And, so without rehashing too much, I'll just say, I think the other piece to add is that, over the years, we have had some major construction projects, and some of them didn't go exactly according to plan, unfortunately. And with the best of intentions, and the city, I think, does a very good job overall of trying to mitigate concerns, but we did see the impacts on local businesses with some major construction projects. And this alone won't solve every piece of it, but I do think it's important that when things don't go exactly according to plan, or if we have a very large extended construction period planned, that we are there to provide some support above and beyond some of the actions I think we've already been taking. So again, I think we had a good discussion at committee, so I'll leave it there for an introduction, and then probably won't need to close, but we'll see how it goes. So.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Rutherford? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, we are, right, I forgot that. But before I do that, so Councillor Rice can take the chair virtually, right? Madam Clerk?
Absolutely.
Okay,
she can,
Councillor Rice, could you take the chair, please?
Yes, sure, you taken.
Thank you. I have few questions that I did not get a chance to ask at the committee, and these are to you, Mr. Laughlin. And this is going back to our experience with the Southeast LRT, and you and I had a number of conversations when I was a city councillor related to one of the locations just off the main street in Millwoods of 28th Avenue, the gas station, right? Would this kind of policy help those kind of situations where they were in, the access was blocked for a prolonged period of time and they lost quite a bit of business? I know it's not going to be the recovery of that loss of the business. What would it provide somewhat relief to in that kind of situation?
Well, again, this policy directed by council to bring back is based off the Montreal model, and the intention of that policy is to, or the policy based on that is to provide some support for business. I think one of the things, so short answer is yes, it has the potential to do that, but in that case, access continued to be provided. We didn't cut off access. There was an access closure that resulted, but access to the site was maintained by different means. So I think short answer is yes, this policy has the ability to support businesses. I'll echo Ms. Bond's comments from yesterday. There isn't a requirement to do this based on the MGA provisions that we're not, it actually provides us protection against providing this kind of support. So,
Yeah. So in that particular case, even though the access was provided or maintained, there was a significant loss in business, and that's what a business would have to demonstrate in order to be eligible under this policy.
that's correct.
Okay. And the construction still continues up to today, right? And that's almost started in 2010 or 11, so it's continues. So that duration of construction that continues for multiple years will be another consideration.
Yes, the policy identifies, or procedure identifies that 3+ years of construction.
So three plus, okay, and demonstration of loss. that
Correct, which is a bit of a, to the point of the Councillor Knack's comments, the BIA identified that it's a retroactive support versus
Yes.
proactive support.
Okay, got it, okay. All right, thank you so much, and I will take the chair back. And I'll go to Councillor Stevenson, because she hasn't had a first round yet.
Thanks very much. Yeah, again, had an opportunity to talk about this at committee, and I do feel like it's a really valuable program to bring forward. I've heard from enough small businesses that really are heavily impacted by this type of construction, and even though there is access, it's different access. It can be very challenging for those businesses, and we want to have thriving main streets and businesses once those infrastructure projects are finished as well. Just wondering if, again, I don't want to slow anything down. I'm really comfortable supporting the motion as it is right now, but just wondering if there is opportunity in the future to evolve this program. So, for example, maybe looking at some different approaches in terms of flat fee reimbursement. So rather than the administrative work of having to prove a loss of business, it would be something like a reduction in property tax, for example. Is that possible for that evolution to occur as the program moves forward, based on feedback from businesses and also just what we're sort of seeing in our own administration of the program?
I think we assessed the property tax reduction and didn't feel that was appropriate, and certainly if Ms. Padbury is on the call, she can provide more context for that. In terms of evolution, I think some of the feedback that we heard at the committee meeting has, if council supports this policy, and as I mentioned at committee, this would have to come back to budget in order to allocate the funding and the resources. but based on some of the feedback from the speakers, our intention is to look at this between now and budget, if council supports it today, to see if there's a different way to approach this. Wouldn't change the policy, but it might change the procedure associated with how we deliver this. But I don't know if
Great.
if Ms. Padbury's here and wants to weigh in on the tax.
Oh, and that's okay. I mean, the property tax exemption is just sort of an example of just looking for those other. I think you captured it well, just in terms of having the overall policy principles and guidelines. But great to hear that there'll be some flexibility in looking at those procedural pieces to really optimize how that program works. So that's great. I appreciate that clarification, and I think I've sort of spoken to it in terms of my support for it, and so happy to yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Tang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I can just get the numbers correct, so 225,000 for approximately 100 businesses. That's kind of the rate we're looking at, right? Sorry, who am I looking at? Mr. Lachlan, is that?
Sorry.
Like if we're going to administer a grant program like this, so it will come out to be around $2,250 per business?
That's again based on the comparable to this Montreal model.
That's right.
As I mentioned, if council approves this policy, we would refine going up to the procedure going up to the budget discussion in the fall.
And that is on top of administrative costs of around $200,000.
Correct.
Right. And so is that comparable to anything other grants we have currently with our city? Maybe, I don't know, the specific grants for businesses, for example, the Edmonton Economic Recovery Grant.
Yeah, and Ms. McCabe can speak to this in terms of values, but some of the assessment we did was comparing to other grant programs that we have. And between now, again, if council approves the policy, between now and budget, we would see if there's opportunities based on those that we could maybe leverage.
Right. And then I guess with some of those grants that we have issued in the past, do we have a sense of like the success of those grants in terms of saving a business or, having that kind of impact, do you know?
Typically, the grant programs that we have aren't intended to save a business. They're typically there to help achieve the city's goals. So whether the city's goals about diversifying the economy and or supporting marginalized communities as two examples, and or beautifying our main streets are a few examples. So many of our programs have been very successful in terms of the city puts $1 in and we're able to leverage private sector dollars in the economic development space.
Cool. Great. No, thank you. Thank you for that bit of information. I guess, how much work have we done to explore new policies that might prevent, really challenging construction impacts to businesses? Beyond, say, making sure there's access to the entrance and that kind of stuff. Have we kind of done this exercise in the past? Because construction's been happening for a long time. Have we explored, preventative, I suppose, policy so we don't have to pay, or we don't have to administer grants retroactively?
No, and part of the reason we haven't is because as a municipality, when we undertake construction for the greater good, through the MGA, we're essentially protected based on any impacts associated with that construction because it is for the greater good, understanding their impacts. Yeah. Which is why our report articulates that we're not too supportive of this, but if council wants us to go in this direction, we would come back with, based on what we've heard, what would be an optimized approach, which could consider a proactive approach.
Yeah. Even though I understand what Councillor Knack was kind of mentioning earlier too, that this could potentially be proactive, but in a different way. And then when we do construction, the companies and workers, we do engage with businesses, do we not? Or
very much.
How to mitigate the impact beforehand? Yeah,
something that has improved considerably and still needs to continue to improve is the degree of engagement that we have with businesses during construction.
And trying to kind of find a solution for that together.
As best we can,
Yeah,
understanding that some of
absolutely.
these projects are very large civil
Yeah.
disruptive.
Absolutely, and sometimes there's things that's unforeseen, and even no matter amount of engagement might not necessarily get to that. I guess, when I'm, just this conversation also triggered a lot of, conversations in the past, similar to the one that Mr. Mayor mentioned in Millwoods, due to the Valley Line LRT constructions, and a pandemic later, many of them are still standing, and it's not easy. Absolutely, but I do wonder, $2,000 or whatever, the final number does come out to be, what would be the real impact versus the perceived impact or help or benefit that it might incur for the businesses. And I do also wonder, what doors this policy, as a permanent policy, would introduce for other types, whether it's businesses or homeowners even. So anyways, thank you very much for the report and the follow-up conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Principe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question, it's kind of related to what Councillor Tang was mentioning about the different grants that are available to businesses. Now, I'm assuming that a business would be allowed to apply to numerous grants then in a year, including this one, if it's passed?
That,
I think we'd have to confirm, because we'd have to make sure that what we're doing is for the intended use, if I could call it that. And I think for some of these other grants, and Ms. McCabe can clarify, I think they would be coming to an end once we get into a state of greater economic recovery. Stephanie?
Many of the grants are stackable, and many of them will continue post-COVID. So there was the Phase 1 economic grant that has already been phased out. Phase 2, the economic recovery grant, is going to continue, and that's all about supporting the economic development plan and supporting businesses that are helping achieve council's goals. So that grant will continue, and our grants are stackable in terms of a business can leverage grants from the federal government, provincial government, as well as multiple city grants, as long as they're achieving the intended outcome.
Okay, and so my understanding is that administration is not too supportive of this motion. What would your solution be then?
Well, again, from a infrastructure perspective, and based on the projects that council's approving, these are all projects that are for the greater good of all Edmontonians. Within the MGA, it identifies that because it is for the greater good, and our legal folks can speak to this much better than I can, there are protections to ensure that these sort of potential challenges because of construction are protected under the MGA. We feel like the work that we do in advance of construction to alert businesses that this intensive infrastructure project is coming, and the ongoing engagement that happens during construction gives them an opportunity to prepare for the circumstances that would happen over the next few years, understanding that once that infrastructure improvement is completed, they are directly benefiting from that infrastructure that is being constructed. So that's, I think, part of the rationale for why we feel like that we just, I would say, don't support this, but again, it's council's purview. If you like us to undertake this program, we will do our best to create a program that meets the needs of businesses for these large infrastructure programs.
Okay, great, thank you. Those were my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. Councillor Salvador?
Yes, thank you so much. And I guess I just had a point of clarification. In attachment 3, where it's outlining the Montreal model, I just noticed that 2 types of work sites are covered under the financial assistance program. In particular, it does speak about sort of 6-month duration projects that are associated with underground infrastructure work. And I'm just wondering, we didn't include that piece, and is that just separation between city and EPCOR, or what's the rationale there?
I think when we undertook this work, Councillor Salvador, we were looking at, based on the different conversations that have happened at council, the a policy and a procedure that would fit with the large-scale infrastructure projects, and focused on those, because those are what I would describe as the most impactful for businesses.
Okay, yeah, definitely understand that. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, rather than being, I guess, maybe a separate grant program, can these costs sort of be determined within the whole project scope when you're looking at the budget for the project, anticipating what might come about?
Yeah, the method to budget for them could be flexible. I would just flag that the budget method for this would be from operating funds, not from capital funds, because it's not a tangible capital asset that we're using these funds for.
Okay. And I was just looking back, the reports are showing that the Montreal grants are going back retroactive to 2016. Would that be considered here for this policy as well?
It would be effective the date of, I guess, policy and budget approval, because ultimately we don't have budget right now. So council may approve the policy today, but it wouldn't be in effect until the budget is formally approved. So it would be from that point forward. And that's the clarity that we would be bringing if council approves the policy today from a procedural perspective between now and the budget discussion.
Okay, so it wouldn't be retroactive to those businesses that have been impacted by the Valley LRT?
Valley Line Southeast, no. Potential for Valley Line West.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Can you move the second round, Councillor Wright?
So moved.
Need a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Stevenson. Any questions for the second round? Seeing none, please vote.
I'm voting no.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the votes, please. That is carried, and I'll go to Councillor Rutherford.
Thank you. So a question I have for legal is, if we have a policy, but then we allocate no budget, does that open us up to liability? So basically, by approving this policy, are we also basically having to commit to budget?
No, the policy simply wouldn't be implemented until such time as you passed an associated budget.
Okay, that's good to know.
And if you didn't pass the budget, then you'd have to repeal or rescind the policy. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah, Ms. McCabe, is there sort of any level of risk in approving a policy, setting up that expectation with the business community, and then not approving a budget?
I think that would be one of the risks that council should consider, is that there will be an expectation from the business community upon a policy being approved, that there's budget allocated to this.
And would Edmonton be the only municipality in Canada to have a program like this without any provincial partnership? Because I'm understanding that the Montreal one has some provincial support.
Mr. Laughlin, can you?
From our analysis, we would be the only municipality to be doing this in Canada without provincial support. In our e-scan in the United States, it varies because of the composition of government and commissions and agencies down there.
Yeah, but when we've talked about budget a lot, we've talked about, we know that this 4-year budget cycle is going to be pretty tight. And so, Ms. Padbury, could you just speak to sort of the operational realities that we are likely to face? Because I know we talked about inflating costs in the construction side, but I'm assuming there's also inflating costs on the operating side.
So that's correct. You like we're doing the work now to prepare for the 4-year budget cycle, but absolutely the economic conditions are such that we're in a higher inflationary environment. So to deliver the existing services at the existing level, we anticipate it to cost more. And that's before you layer on any other new service packages. So I think describing the budget, the next round of budget, as being an economic challenge is a valid way to describe it.
Yeah, and I would add, Councillor, that's one of the reasons that, it's not as strongly supported by administration. We're going to have a big enough challenge to fund the things that are core services and that we should and must fund. To fund something that we don't have to, in accordance with the MGA, is what's really holding us back from supporting it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to highlight that, again, the municipal and provincial taxes are done differently, and so we only really have, property taxes as our revenue source. So we are literally going to be looking at this from that angle. And Ms. McCabe, would you say that? So if we did a grant program like this, you mentioned about leveraging economic development goals for the city, and is there sort of an investment ratio, like we want to see a return on investment for public dollars?
Typically, that's the space that cities are in when they're in for supporting businesses, is they put $1 in and they use that dollar to leverage private sector investment in order to achieve their outcomes. So that is typically the space that we're in for economic development in terms of the storefront improvement program, our downtown incentive program, the economic Phase 2 grant, which is all about diversifying the economy and supporting businesses that are achieving council's goals. It's all about leveraging private sector dollars in order to achieve your goals.
And wouldn't you say too that, like, as areas change, like with major city changing construction projects, that often the commercial and even the residential demographic over time changes in that area?
It does, and that's really an expectation, especially with LRT, that we do have an expectation that our city is going to change. That's the reason for making a large-scale investment like the LRT, is to help achieve the city's goals around transit-oriented development and the type of city that you're trying to build.
Okay. So my question to the mover is, with all of this information, can you give me any reason why I should support this motion on the floor?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm happy to close to it as well, but I think we've still heard that through a number of businesses that there have been economic challenges due to major construction. And there are a number of great programs and grants that we have in place that haven't fixed all of those issues and have still impacted businesses during those constructions. So I think this is one more tool to help address what is a real challenge for businesses that are dealing with significant construction. But I know we're out of time. Happy to go into more detail during closing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. And I see no more questions on this item. And I will go to Councillor Knack to close. Speak, okay. Just hold on, Councillor Knack.
Sure.
Before you close, I will go, what my tongue is not twisting properly. I will go to Councillor Rutherford to close, to speak, sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate the intent of this, and I think, we definitely have to support our local businesses. I think that this specific policy, I think we need to heed the advice of our administration on this one. And I'm very, very concerned about the precedents this sets. I'm very concerned about the actual ability to do this and what we will have to compromise. Like, I'm thinking about snow clearing, I'm thinking about waste management, I'm thinking about those other things. When you open and operate a business, you accept a certain level of risk in being in the private sector. And we have clear guidelines in our Municipal Government Act that allow us protection against this kind of thing, because it is for the greater good. And if we're acting in the greater good, we have to think about that, because what are we going to do when residents come to us and say, well, our property value went down $30,000 as well? Well, why are we supporting business? Why are you supporting businesses, but you're not supporting your constituents? So I think that, we've heard from the IIS, Integrated Infrastructure Services, their caution on doing this and their great work that they've done, and I've seen it firsthand. having worked on a major capital infrastructure project, the level of consultation they do with businesses is significant. You know, when I was on the Yellowhead, we would literally go down and knock on every business door and have coffee chats with every business in an affected area. Like this, they don't take this lightly, absolutely. And they do find ways to address those issues. But at the end of the day, impacts are part of the honest conversation that we have to have with businesses, and they have forewarning. Like, think about the overpass at 127th Street with the Yellowhead Trail Freeway Conversion Program. Businesses, it's not like that's just an overnight project that will be starting construction tomorrow. They have had years of engagement and discussion and dialogue about that, and every step from concept all the way through to construction. And so it's not that they do not have time as a business to adapt and prepare. So I just cannot support this motion on the floor, given that context of, you know, taking admin's advice in heeding our operational budget, and with the great work that IIS is doing to support businesses and minimize those impacts, recognizing there is and absolutely will be impacts. But we have other grants, as mentioned by Ms. McCabe as well, to support businesses in other ways. And I think that this isn't the best leverage tool. We could spend $40,000, we could spend money on a business in this grant and they could still go under, right? It's not a guarantee here. And so I really encourage my colleagues to really think about this vote and to think about if we realistically are setting up those expectations with business community that we may or may not be able to deliver. Will they come back and say, well, retroactively isn't good enough either? I anticipate that would be the next conversation that would happen as well. And so I really do hope that that we don't start down this path and we stay within the protections of the MGA. Thank you.
Mayor Soya, I think there's a point of order to be raised here. Just
Yeah.
the motion on the floor is not in order. So I'm not
Yes,
sure if
that's, I've
Councillor-
been just advised
Yeah.
as well. Right?
Councillor Knack may want to revise it as
Yeah.
is his motion.
Which is that, Madam Clerk, is the funding issue, right?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you, Mr.
So
Sorry.
why the motion is not in order because of the funding? No.
Apologies, I'm just trying to understand. So the policy that was presented up to council came from committee. There's nothing wrong with the policy, but there's no effective date in there.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to understand and listening to the.
So could it be effective subject to budget
yeah.
approval?
So we don't usually put subject to in a policy, just to be really clear. If council's approving this, I would just ask that the motion include subject to budget approval, and that the budget approval would, if the budget is approved, then the policy comes
Yes.
into effect, rather than the policy coming into effect with no
Yeah.
money to implement it.
Okay.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around what decision comes first.
So you would suggest adding subject to budget approval?
Yes,
Okay.
something along, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Councillor Knack?
Yeah, that's reasonable. My understanding is we needed the policy to get a sense of what kind of budget would come forward to council later, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, seems like a friendly, because there's no budget, there's no policy, right? So, seems like, okay, that seems friendly to be added to the motion. Okay, can we proceed now, Madam Clerk? Okay, got it. Councillor Cartmel?
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. I won't take very long. I agree generally with what Councillor Rutherford has offered in terms of the Pandora's box piece that this opens, that it starts here, but it becomes, it starts leaking into a number of different things. We've had conversations before. Just a few weeks ago, we were talking about tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations, and my recollection is we moved away from that because effectively, when you get into property tax exemptions, essentially the amount of tax requisition that we need on an aggregate basis doesn't go down. It just gets redistributed to those that are continuing to pay to a higher degree. So it's, I understanding that there's challenges that businesses encounter when they're adjacent to big construction projects. I don't think this is the remedy, and I think we end up going down the road of ever fewer people paying the freight for ever more people having an exemption. And there's certainly a quantum element there and an order of magnitude thing there, but fundamentally, I just don't agree that this is the right approach. And I do agree with the notion that it starts here, but it certainly doesn't end here. It becomes many more things to many more individuals and property owners that are looking for some sort of a break for some sort of reason. So I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Tang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to a pretty robust conversation here, but also at the executive committee. I will not be supporting this. You know, in Wargaregio, there's been a major construction project that's been going on for years. And having talked to many of those businesses, absolutely those challenges are real. I've also known many businesses that have pivoted since then and, you know, have not only survived, but, you know, continue to do quite well. Not to say that, you know, we should lean on people's resiliency as sort of the resolution here. But I'm very mindful of some of the comments yesterday from Ms. McCabe in terms of, you know, when it comes to business support, there are so much more that we could be doing. And I'm very aware of a number of those work coming up this quarter and next quarter that will have, I think, will go much farther than an interim, in my opinion, a Band-Aid solution. And more than that, I think when it comes to construction, I will much rather see policies that will prevent these kinds of detrimental construction impacts to businesses. And I think, as Mr. Lachlan had mentioned, that we're getting better at engagement, at being more proactive, more preventative. And I think those are the measures that will go much farther than the grant, whether it's 2,000 or whatever, that will alleviate in the moment as we speak. And so I'm interested to work on some of those pieces, instead of necessarily, I think, focusing on a very near-term solution. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Hamilton.
I was just about to click off, but Councillor Tang kept her remarks brief enough that I couldn't change my mind fast enough. You know, I'm really empathetic to what Councillor Knack is trying to do, especially because I think we've both had constituents, similar to Councillor Tang, who've seen some hardship from the investment in major infrastructure projects and the unplanned sort of complications from those major infrastructure projects. But I'm generally inclined to agree with Councillors Cartmel and Rutherford because I am cognizant that we have we always compare it to a pie, but lately I've been comparing it to a bill at a restaurant when you've gone out to eat with like a group of people. And increasingly we're finding that there's less and less people sort of capable of paying, and it's leaving the people at the table who are with a higher bill. I really hate those dinners, by the way. So I'm, you know, I was going to say maybe we should let this ride to budget, and then if people want to see this in the community, then they can come out and support it. But I think that our budget's going to be I think it's going to be a really hard conversation. I'm bracing for a really hard conversation, and I don't want to sort of lead folks on in thinking that this might be something that would pass at that time. So unfortunately, while I appreciate where Councillor Knack is coming from, I'm not going to support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Knack, to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the conversation and some of the concerns of my colleagues. And I guess for me, this is one of those situations where I really encourage folks not to let perfect be the enemy of good, and really reflect on if what we need to be doing to make sure we're supporting businesses. So I appreciate, and I'm the first to acknowledge, and we heard that, we don't have a legal obligation to do this. But let's be clear, there are many things that council does that we don't have a legal obligation to do, that we do because it's the right thing to do. There's a moral obligation. I mean, think about during COVID, how we provided economic grants to businesses, not because we were legally required to. There was no requirement for us to do that during that time. But we did that because we recognize that there are times where there are unique situations that arise. that require a specific response. And I am the first person to proclaim the greatness of our infrastructure program. I have tried to be one of the strongest advocates of Mr. Laughlin and his team and the work that they do and the amount of projects that are on time and on budget. And I do believe that they do a very good job of engagement. The problem is, even if they're perfect at that, these large construction projects do have a real impact on businesses. Businesses have closed that were adjacent to large construction projects. Businesses have lost substantial revenue because of large construction projects. And no matter how much you try to work on alternative access, gosh, I think about the Grote Road Bridge example and how those businesses on High Street, no matter what we could do, and we tried everything as a city to try to help support those businesses, a number of them, mostly small businesses, were directly impacted by that change. Out of our control, I realize that those girders bent, like, gosh, it was just a frustrating situation that nobody could have prevented, but we could have helped. And we didn't do it to the degree I think we need to. And so I think that's what I'm encouraging council to think about here. Are there other ways we can help? Possibly, but those ideas, those potential ideas aren't on the floor today. And we should potentially go work on them and develop other plans and maybe at a point remove this and put in something else in its place. But until that point, I'm really encourage councilors to think about all of those large infrastructure projects, all of those small businesses, and how we can help folks navigate through a process. And I think it is worth talking a little bit about that Montreal example once again, because if you go back to when they put it in, they actually set aside a much higher budget. There was this fear that it would open Pandora's box, that tons of money would go out the door, it would be abused. And what they found is that, in fact, they spent far less than they originally set out. Why? Because the businesses that truly needed it were the ones who went and accessed it. Because truly, most people are going to be good people, aren't going to try to fudge their numbers and say, oh, look, my sales weren't actually what they were, just to try to get a little bit of money to go through the process like this. This is truly for those businesses that are directly impacted. And no matter how good the other work we do on the city side is, we have still seen real impacts to small business owners. So that's what why I've been pushing this for as long as I have, because I think this is one small thing we can do to add to the broader body of work that we need to continue to do as a city. We need to continue to work on signage and access. But again, think about some of these large construction projects. Think about that example that Mayor Sohi mentioned in Mill Woods. Even if you kept both access points open, even if you had those type of things, there's still going to be a challenge of getting into these locations when large construction is underway. And so I do think it's reasonable for us to have a small reprieve in this. And so that's why I would encourage council to support this. Again, are there better options? Quite possibly. Love to work on that with all of you. Let's spend the next while doing that. And in the meantime, let's actually provide some help to businesses in a way that helps with these large construction projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. I will call the vote.
We're good to go.
Display the votes, please. That has failed. Okay, so that was 6.7. We dealt with 6.8, 6.9, and now our next item is 6.10, 2022 Day Service Operating Agreement. It was selected by Councillor Rutherford. I'll go to administration. There you go. Ms. Kajaner, welcome. I think there might be a, yeah. Is there a brief presentation? Sure. Okay, good.
Yes, we have some opening remarks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. With me today is Crystal Kajener, the Acting Branch Manager of Social Development, and Jennifer Flaman, the Deputy City Manager of Citizen Services. So over the past decade, Edmonton's made significant progress towards ending homelessness. Since 2009, over 13,000 people have been housed. Prior to the pandemic, the number of people experiencing homelessness had fallen to 1,300, levels not seen since the 1990s. But over the last 2 years, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Edmonton has doubled, creating greater gaps in services required to support vulnerable Edmontonians. This has led to an overall level of homelessness that matches our historic peak experienced last when the Alberta economy was booming in 2007. Since the early days of the pandemic, all levels of government have supported an expansion of services for vulnerable Edmontonians. The city has stepped up to meet the challenges, providing significant funding for supporting vulnerable Edmontonians, particularly for day services at a number of sites beginning in May 2021. The one-time funding for these day services is set to expire at the end of the month. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Kajener.
Thank you and good morning, City Council. Given the current environment, the agencies involved in providing crisis response for people experiencing homelessness continue to be challenged to respond to the significant increase in demand within their existing budgets and facilities. Service providers have communicated to the City of Edmonton that continued funding is required to maintain expanded operational hours. Without additional funding for services, there will be fewer places to access critical basic services such as showers and meals. In order to mitigate potential loss of services, the City of Edmonton wishes to enter into a new subsidy agreement with the Bissell Centre to provide funding to enable the agency to continue to provide day services on an expanded basis. These services will include essential supplies such as food, clothing, and hygiene services, Indigenous cultural services, referrals to housing and housing services, referral and in-reach programs and services, and day service operational supports. A new subsidy agreement would extend these services from May 2022 to approximately October 2022. The funding ask associated with this proposal is $1.8 million to be funded from the COVID-19 specific funds set aside to address impacts of the pandemic. This agreement would partially extend the City of Edmonton's COVID-19 crisis response while still reducing the overall funding amount provided in the past by focusing on maintaining access to only the most critical services through the maintenance of expanded operating hours at the Bissell Centre's purpose-built day shelter. This subsidy agreement with Bissell Centre is a temporary measure to support vulnerable Edmontonians throughout the summer and fall as we transition out of a pandemic response. The next 2 years will be important for further decision-making on the City of Edmonton's role in responding to homelessness. A number of reports, including the Government of Alberta's Coordinated Community Response to Homelessness Task Force report and forthcoming work led by Homeward Trust to create a new plan for ending homelessness, all present opportunities for City Council to further consider the City of Edmonton's ongoing contributions to addressing homelessness. These efforts will also include work on the part of administration to further clarify the Government of Alberta's plans to respond to the increased need in our city. In summary, administration is seeking committee's approval, or City Council's approval rather, to fund and enter into a subsidy agreement between the City of Edmonton and the Bissell Centre to provide day services at the Bissell Centre community space for an amount not exceeding $1.8 million as an interim strategy to maintain access to essentials for people experiencing homelessness this summer while we continue to work to clarify the longer-term response to the growing need. Thank you. We'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I might just add a bit more context just before we go to questions. First, I am trying to set up a meeting with Deputy Minister of CSS at the province to also provide the same presentation and ask for this funding. I just have no idea whether that would be successful. So I would, my ask for council is, you know, we need to get going on this now. If I can get some funds from the province, that would maybe offset some of this, but we do need a decision going forward. Secondly, I would say that we will be coming back to committee later this month with a more comprehensive encampment strategy plan for council to consider, which will be linked to another request that we will likely put forward as part of that strategy for additional shelter supports. And we're trying to really sort of take a comprehensive perspective of, with encampments, this is one piece of the encampment help alleviate the camping issue, but we're going to need more shelter space this summer and through next winter. But I also want to see if we can get the province to contribute as they did shortly after the election in a similar way. So I just wanted to set the context that this is one request coming forward today. There's a bunch more coming forward and a bunch more work we're doing with the province to try to get them to pay the share that they should, given their jurisdictional responsibilities. So.
Thank you so much for those comments and the presentation. Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, thank you. So I read the report. I've been very clear that I'm supportive of this kind of stuff, but one thing that I did find missing was any kind of data on how the day use shelter, like what kind of numbers is the day use shelter seeing? How many of them are unique individuals? How many of them are, continual use? Just getting a sense of some of that data. So when we're talking about this funding, that would be very helpful.
So, Councilor, I can start, and Ms. Kajener can fill in the blanks. Between May and December, the Bissell Center had over almost 5,200 unique individuals.
Okay.
Almost 73,000 visits to the day shelter.
Okay.
And then they made, through those, the connections to housing, to financial supports, provided 98,000 meals, 7,000 loads of laundry, 13,000 showers. So there's significant data on the utilization.
That's fantastic. If there is that data, like just for the future, can that be included in these reports? Because I just think it's so valuable and it helps to say that. Now, when does Edmonton, the city of Edmonton, do their point in time count? Or is it Homer Trust that does the point in time count?
The point in time count is organized by the 7 cities of Alberta. So Homer Trust is one of the organizations in that organization, and they had scheduled one for last year, but had to cancel it due to growing COVID cases. We're still waiting to hear when the next one will be. They did do an administrative count, which meant that they looked just at shelter data essentially.
Yeah.
But the results of that have not been released publicly yet that I've seen.
Okay, because if I'm correct, it's usually in September, right? The point in time count. It's a specific date every year, right? So you get that same. Was my understanding it was September?
Last year it was scheduled for the spring.
Okay.
But honestly, the pandemic has kind of thrown
Yeah.
the typical cycle into a flux, let's say.
Yeah, I just absolutely hope that we can get that data because I'd like to see how the numbers, in more of a formalized assessment of how those numbers are, where they're at.
Sure. We can find out when the next point in time count will be scheduled, but we also, I'll just note, Councillor Rutherford, we do have the by names list as well, which is a real-time account of the number of people experiencing homelessness, and over 60 agencies in Edmonton contribute to that on an ongoing basis. So we do consider that to be the most accurate reflection of the number of people experiencing homelessness, and that number is just currently over 3,000 at the moment.
Okay, so did we see because wasn't it 3,500 at one point?
It hasn't been quite that high, but I can pull it up. It's actually publicly available, and I can
I'm just trying to get a sense of like, at what point
I understand.
are we, because if this is just a temporary, at what point do we say, is this temporary any longer, or is this our current reality? I guess is what I'm trying to get a sense of, or are we actually seeing as we open up those numbers declining?
I completely understand the question you're asking, and I would say in the last few months, we've seen a slowing in the growth of additions to the by names list. I'm hesitant to identify that as a trend at this point, but it's certainly something that we're watching with, a smidgen of optimism and hoping that trend continues.
Yeah, I hope so too, but I mean, that's so valuable. I think that hearing that, there's over 5,000 unique individuals using that day shelter and day space, and that, 73,000 visits. This is, clearly dollars that would be used in are supporting our most vulnerable. So thank you for that information.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thanks very much for this report, and I'm certainly very happy to support these resources. I think they're essential and will definitely help address the other challenges that we see throughout the downtown as well. So happy to support that. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the more strategic considerations. So I didn't see it in the sort of draft agreement form, but is there a requirement that that the Bissell would have to meet the minimum shelter requirements as they apply to day centers, recognizing that the shelter standards, do have a lot about the overnight, but would they be required to meet those other provisions?
Councillor Stevenson, the minimum emergency shelter standards were developed with overnight shelters in mind. They weren't, at the time when we were developing them, we didn't include day shelter services in that. However, part of the reason we're recommending funding the Bissell Centre is because we know that operationally a lot of their practices do align with the spirit and intent of those minimum shelter standards. And so we haven't created a separate day shelter standard yet, or we haven't been directed to do that, but that's certainly something we could look at. But either way, we know that the Bissell Centre as a provider certainly aligns with the spirit and intent of those standards.
Okay, yeah, I think, I was sort of going through things around, storage, neighborhood impacts, service restrictions. Those all seem really applicable to a day center scenario. So just wondering if that's an explicit requirement, if that will be an explicit requirement of the agreement or not at this point.
I would say not explicit at this point, Councillor Stevenson, only because when we developed the standards and did all of that extremely broad community engagement, we were really clear that it was focused on overnight shelters. But I think that is certainly something we could look at in the future, creating like a day standard based on the similar approach, if that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, I think that would be wonderful to see moving forward. Also, just wondering. I guess sort of a bit of a two-part question. So the report does reference some other agreements that are expiring. Just wondering if we will maybe potentially be reviewing other similar recommendations moving forward. And just if there's any additional work that's been done with any providers that can provide specific spaces for women and LGBTQ plus folks. I know that was sort of flagged as a key need in our community.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So you're correct, there are 3 agreements currently in place, and we're only recommending continuing to fund this one operator. And part of that is because this operator will face the most significant impacts in terms of the service offering without continued funding. The other 2 operators are in a bit of a better position to extend some of the services, though certainly not all. But as you know, this isn't a typical expenditure for the city, and we don't have a funding source for this. So we are using our COVID funding, but we are working towards tapering and a more sustainable solution, and working with our partners on a more sustainable model that doesn't require, semi-annual funding agreements, essentially. And so we believe that this investment represents the best return on investment in terms of expansion of services. And then when it comes to the other target audiences you mentioned, certainly the Bissell Centre is a welcoming space and has policies around being inclusive for the groups that you mentioned. We are doing some engagement currently on Indigenous-led services and Indigenous-led shelter and outreach. And so through that, we are looking specifically at Indigenous-led services. But other than that, we don't have we're not specifically leading a process on that, but I do expect that the discussion around ensuring the needs of people experiencing homelessness who are women or LGBTQ+ will come out through that update to the Plan 10 homelessness that I referenced in the speaking notes at the beginning.
Great. Thanks very much for that. And finally, maybe to just preempt a bit of the conversation, really appreciate that there'll be a report coming later this month around an encampment strategy. I have a lot of concerns that this summer is going to be one of the worst that we've experienced, and I can't help coming to the conclusion that that a managed encampment might need to be part of the conversation as we talk about an encampment strategy moving forward. So just wondering if that will or can be considered as part of our conversation that we have later this month.
It is being considered, Councillor Stevenson, and we will bring it up. Not sure what the recommendation will be just at this point. There's quite a lot of things to mitigate, but I can tell you that it is in our tool of options being considered.
Great, I appreciate that. I also don't know what the recommendation will be around that, but appreciate that that's part of the thinking, and look forward to that conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Jans.
So could administration clarify what is the recommendation that you're looking for today?
2 recommendations, Councillor, to approve the funding, the $1.8 million, and also to give us the authority to enter into the agreement with the Bissell Centre.
And I'm interested in, I think I could probably guess, but if this was not supported by council, what would the alternative be?
The alternative would be that the Bissell Center would only operate 5 days a week from 12 to, or for 4 hours a day from 12 or 5 days a week. If with this additional funding, they can continue to operate at 6 days a week for an expanded number of hours a day. I think it's 8 hours. It's over 8 hours a day.
And could you elaborate a little bit on some of the, I guess, what would the what would the impact be on some of our neighbors who are currently using those services if we weren't to fund this?
Sure. So some of the impacts would be certainly less access to laundry and showers. There's not very many facilities within the inner city that have that are purpose-built and designed with day shelter in mind. And so the Bissell provides some of the best access for hygiene services like laundries and showers. Additionally, it would restrict the number of meals available to folks. In addition, the Bissell Center's drop-in is one of our, I would say, most effective outreach hubs for accessing, connecting people sleeping outside or in other environments to housing services. And so we'd lose some ability to continue to house people at the same speed and volume that we've seen over the course of the pandemic so far.
So apart from the human dignity impacts, there would also be a strain on either other service providers, or there would just be no service provided at all?
That's correct. It would displace folks to other service providers and also reduce overall access to some specific services, specifically hygiene and housing, which are two of the focus areas for the Bissell Center.
This is it may be a little bit squeamish for some, but I've heard that those hygiene services are actually, they play a kind of a preventative medical role. I heard stories about a neighbor with an ingrown toenail that was getting risks of getting infected, and because they were able to get services and showers and this prevented them from having a sick foot that required an emergency room visit. And sometimes it's those little things like that can have they can alleviate burden on our emergency rooms and healthcare system and everything else. Is that a fair, or am I stretching it?
No, I think that's a fair comment, Councillor Jans, and I would also say that the Bissell Center includes wound care and some minor medical services at their drop-in as well, so it does relieve the burden on other health facilities to have access to nurses through the Bissell Center's drop-in.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot from both, I would say, our BIA's White Ave and downtown about pressure of some of our neighbors who are kind of have nowhere else to go. Will this investment help alleviate some of those pressures that we're hearing from other neighbors?
Yes, Councillor Jans, that's part of why we're here today with this recommendation, is because we share Councillor Stevenson's concerns about the increased risk of encampments and also social disorder associated with people experiencing homelessness downtown this summer. And so we believe that it's important that people have other alternative places to go if we want to minimize disruption to people, other users of the downtown area.
So I'm going to say congruent with the shelter standards, a sensible investment, sounds like a good return. I guess my only two other questions would be integration with harm reduction and integration with our transit system and some of the work we're trying to do about creating a welcoming space for all on transit.
So certainly part of the reason the Bissell Center is trained in providing overdose response services, and they do also participate in a good neighbor way outside of their building. They'll respond to incidents outside their building. I know that through some of our efforts on the transit center, our safety initiative, working with the COT team, the Bissell Center is the exact kind of facility that the COT team would be referring people to access during the day and diverting them from transit instead.
Thank you. I'm prepared to support the recommendation. I guess my only question would be, is this enough? And further to Councillor Stevenson, do we need to move towards a managed encampment strategy? And I think we'll have that conversation later, but I'm prepared to support the recommendation today. Thank you.
Yeah, there'll be a lot more coming on this, Councillor. So to that question, lots more coming in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Appreciate the response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Tang.
First, I'll move the recommendations that the Social Development Branch 2022 operating expenditure budget be increased by 1.8 million on a one-time basis with funding from the COVID-19 specific funds. Do I need to read the whole thing? Okay. And also the subsidy agreement between the city and the Bissell Center.
Yes, good.
Thank
Second.
you. Second by Councillor Stevenson.
And I just, recently I had the pleasure of actually visiting the Bissell Center without realizing that this report was coming and had a chance to learn about the impact of the city funding on their work. I guess one thing I wanted to just build on that operating hour question. Currently it's 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I think the bulk of their operating dollars right now is from the city. Come May 1st, it will go down to 4 hours. So what will 1.8 million get us?
Council gets us back to 8 hours a day and 6 days a week. So more than doubling what they're able to provide on their own.
Yeah, and I also just kind of mentioned that the Indigenous support service was something that came out of the COVID work, really saw some of these social services coming together and collaborating with one another, which is quite extraordinary, and happy to know that this will continue with this funding. And I'm wondering about the street outreach teams, because that was a really critical component that I heard. Would that continue as part of this?
Outside of this report, but within administration's delegated authority, we are looking at providing some additional resources to Boyle Street Community Services and or the Boyle Macaulay Health Center to provide some mobile overdose response through a street outreach team. That's similar to what was provided last summer. We're just working to ensure that we have the resources for that, but I think that shouldn't be an issue, and that is a high priority for us as well.
And so, sorry, so is Bissell Center part of that conversation then at this moment?
Bissell Center wouldn't be because we have two other, but these teams would cover that area, including the area around Bissell. But we usually work with the agency that has a specialization in providing those types of services.
Gotcha. And certainly, we've also heard a lot of feedback from Chinatown and area around the number of people who are overdosing just in plain sight on the streets. And I think these street outreach team actually provide really critical boots on the ground. They may not be uniform, but I think that's a really important service that needs to be prioritized, so I'm really glad to hear that. Curious, because I can't remember this from the visit, there's a lot of harm reduction and housing services, any kind of recovery-oriented services that you're aware of?
Well, certainly the Bissell Center would provide referrals to those types of services if that's what the client desires or if that's what they're seeking. So certainly, referrals to treatment, referrals to the George Spady medical detox, which is part of a recovery-oriented continuum of care, would certainly be available through the Bissell Center. But in terms of service providers in the inner city, currently, the ones that are focused more on the recovery orientation, I'd say it would be the George Spady, and Home Mission also has a recovery-oriented program.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Corbell, when you do have that conversation coming up, I think that piece will be really, as I'm sure you're aware of, that piece will be extremely important for your conversation with the province.
Yeah, and I would say that the recovery aspect of this will be an integral part of the community safety and well-being plan and strategy, as well as the encampment strategy, and with our discussions with the province. Yeah.
My timer hasn't started, just FYI, Miss Clerk. And I'm wondering. Okay, thank you. I have 1 minute left. How much do we have left in the COVID funding pool? Ms. Hadley.
Before this, you have about 1.9 million, so this will leave after you approve this, it'll leave 0.1. But you will see some adjustments come back in the fall SOBA, the spring SOBA, because we've now gotten that transit money, so we'll propose some shifting of money back into that reserve at the spring SOBA.
What would be a healthy limit?
We don't define a healthy limit for the COVID appropriated FSR. That's just money set aside for COVID. That's where you've created some flexibility through what we've done fiscally over the last couple of years.
Okay.
You still have the balance of the unappropriated FSR for other emergent items, non-COVID related.
Got it, thank you. And then this funding will go up until October. Any plans for after that, or is that just going to transition into winter emergency?
Yeah, that's going to be the subject to some other reports we have coming to council.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
And just so I'm correct, but currently it's predominantly city funding with very, very limited provincial funding. Is that, or any?
I would say there is definitely provincial funding, and shortly after the election, we did get some support to the tune of
for Bissell.
Oh, sorry, for Bissell, okay.
Specifically.
The Bissell receives funding from the provincial government in addition to the City of Edmonton, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Principe?
Thank you. So my concern is that it's only operating 6 days a week. Is it possible to be operating 7 days a week?
That is possible, Councillor Principe. I mean, it's not that it's the only, like, obviously, other facilities in the inner city are also open on the day that it's not operating. So as you know, through the pandemic, the government of Alberta shifted the shelter response to be 24/7. So some of the services that folks could access at Bissell on the Sunday would be available through other facilities like the emergency shelters on that day. So it's not the only service, which is part of why we recommended it this model. We could look at a 7-day model, but it would obviously increase the cost. And we just thought that this was the best value for money on balance, given the fact the limited funding available for this type of thing.
Right, right. There are other shelters they can access. Are they, and they're fairly close by, correct? Yeah. Is it really right across the street or fairly close to right across the street?
It's very close,
right?
yeah, very
Okay,
close, within
yeah.
a few block, or a couple block radius.
Yeah, okay. And the other shelters are able to accommodate all that come?
We do have concerns about the overall capacity of the shelter system, but during the day, we find that that's not when those concerns are the most pronounced.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. Councillor Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to say, and a few days ago, and I visit specific this space of community spaces. I did see the huge needs there, and the man up, and then inside, and there's so many people there. And I'm so glad to say, and our city is doing something to support our vulnerable population who needs these services. So my question is about like how many these third-day services and we have across the city. Is it just only one and in that specific area, or we have the different day services shelters in the different area?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Rice. There are other day services available in different parts of the city. So in the inner city, in addition to the Bissell Centre, there are day services, available at the Boyle Street Community Centre, in addition to the day services provided through the 24/7 operations of Hope Mission. So they have 2 facilities there. On the south side, the Mustard Seed operates the Neighbor Center, which is currently under construction to expand to be able to support additional folks. So it's not open at the moment, but when it reopens, it will be able to support a larger number of clients. And then in addition to that, there's also other agencies, including like Jasper Place Health and Wellness, which operates on the west end along Stony Plain Road. They also have access to some day services there.
Okay, thank you for that. And then specifically, and for our city supports day services shelters, this is only one we provided the funding, or we are going, or we have been providing all the funding across the city for other day services as well.
Throughout the course of the pandemic, we have funded a number of providers besides the Bissell Centre, but going forward, this would be the only agency receiving day funding specifically from the City of Edmonton.
Okay. So specifically because the location of these community spaces, and then is that possible? And looking at the big environment impact in that area, and then in very like close area, we have like based on what he described, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 locations to provide the similar services, and in very close area, specifically in Chinatown area, in downtown area. And so is there any plan, and from long-term perspective, our city can spread some like support to the different location or different area? Is there any plan in place or any discussion in place as well?
Thanks again for the question, Councillor Rice. Certainly there's a lot of discussion about the need for providing access to services in different parts of the city. I think most agencies also acknowledge that people experiencing homelessness are in all parts of Edmonton, not just in Chinatown area. However, that being said, while there's considerable conversations, there isn't necessarily, a large pool of funding or resources available to create new facilities in new parts of the city at this time. So I think the approach that we're taking so far is to try and influence those discussions and wait for opportunities where there may be the ability to expand services and to connect those dots. But certainly we work to the extent that we can to use our influence with our colleagues and partners to encourage new services to locate in different parts of the city where the need is not being met.
Okay. So how many years and we provide this $1.8 million and to this specific organization? Is this the number every year change or every year is the same and with agreement?
So last summer, which would be the most, I think, relevant comparator, we were providing just under $5 million for expanded services in the inner city. But as we noted in the presentation, because this isn't a core function of the city, we don't typically fund these types of supports and services. We have been working to taper our investment while still doing our best to ensure that there is additional services available to help mitigate the challenges that we mentioned that have been brought on by the pandemic, which means more people experiencing homelessness and reduced access. So we are working towards a longer-term, more sustainable plan with our partners and the agencies going forward. We're not there yet, however, and that's why we're recommending this interim investment today.
Thank you very much. And then also I would like to quickly thank Ms. Corbett mentioned about the working collaborating with the provincial government, because yes, and we do need ensure this collaboration in place, and specifically from provincial jurisdiction responsibility perspective. And then our city's support and is part of that, and but without the three orders of government supports work together for this, we may not have the enough resources and in other area, and then instead of only focus on Chinatown or downtown area. Thank you for that. If anything, Ms. Krobo, you would like to add, and welcome to add. Thank you, but my time is out.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. And I'll go to Councillor Wright next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally support this, but I'm just worried that we're always seem to be providing Band-Aid solutions and backfilling what should be provincial responsibility. And I'm glad, Mr. Corwell, that you are in discussions with the provincial government. But I'm just wondering, if we were not to approve this funding, would that create a greater sense of urgency for the province to respond? And with their task force, not only make recommendations, but provide sustainable funding?
I don't think so. And of course, if we did it for that reason, I really worry about, using people to do that and what impacts people would have. So I think my view is we have to do the right thing here. You're right, these are Band-Aid solutions. We continue to build the case and work with our partners, the province, to make sure they see that and understand that. And so I don't think not funding it will have a significant impact or add pressure to the province. Yeah.
Is the task force then, their report that is coming back, will it include not just recommendations, but funding options that they would be providing?
Don't know yet. I will be providing an update on the task force in private later in this council meeting, but I do have a non-disclosure agreement as part of that task force, and so we have to be careful. But the answer to your question is we have not gotten to that point, but I can talk more about that when we do the update.
All right, yeah, well, I do continue to support this because we do have to take care of our fellow Edmontonians. So, but I just wondering if there was another angle that we could use. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Rice, can you take the chair, please?
Yes, chair is taken.
So, Ms. Kajaner, I have a very good understanding on the long-term advocacy that is necessary for I said advocacy necessary for long-term solutions, because supportive permanent housing works, and we know what we need, and we've been advocating to the province and to the federal government and wrapped around services that are necessary. Where I'm struggling is what is the short-term needs that we have that we can put together to the province, say, this is how much money we need for day shelters, this is how much money we need for nighttime shelters, and providing services at a community level that no one is left out on the street, or at least people would have an option to go to a shelter daytime and nighttime. And we struggled with that leading up to the last winter. We got lucky that we got emergency funding. I want to be prepared that we don't have the same situation come next winter, and also summer as well, spring. So I just want to get an understanding, when would we have enough information that we can reach to the province, say, this is what we need for day shelters, this is what we need for night shelters.
We're almost there, Your Worship. In a couple of weeks, we're going to come back to council with that comprehensive plan that includes encampments and lists out the specific needs in each category for the next year. And we're going to be going to the province, within weeks to start doing that. And my advice would be I'll start at the deputy minister level, and then we'll work through an engagement strategy for you as well.
Yeah, because that is so necessary, because now one of the implications and the consequences of not having enough space is that people are sleeping at LRT stations, right? Or they're going into the library and causing that concern of perceived safety or real safety.
Yes, you're absolutely correct, and that's why we're linking all of this from a strategy perspective to downtown and LRT safety and community safety in areas where people are. Absolutely. Yeah.
And tackling these societal issues of houselessness, mental health, addictions is not a municipal responsibility. Am I right? It's a provincial responsibility.
Yes, I believe you're right. And even when we get to the point of showing, and even if we get support for the shelters and the spaces, that is not going to fix the drug poisoning issue, the opioid issue, and the mental health issue, which is the root cause of many of what drives people into these circumstances. And this gets back to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Report, where we talk about one of the key pillars is to prevent pathways into poverty and homelessness, and to find pathways out of poverty and out of homeless. I would say the municipal responsibility, it should really be focused on the pathways out, and which is what we tend to do. We need a lot more help on preventing pathways into poverty and into homelessness, and that really is health supports and addiction supports and mental health supports.
And we've been investing to manage these crises, like with this $1.8 million, which we absolutely need to invest. We put in $4.8 million to keep the transitional houses open.
Yeah.
And we are investing close to $4 million on transit safety because of the issues caused by social issues and the disorder they cause.
Yeah, not to mention the 10 or 15 million we spent on the convention center last year, and it just goes on. So we will make sure we're ultra clear in terms of how many millions of dollars Edmontonians have spent on jurisdictional issues that are not ours.
Because the sense I'm getting, this is not a critique, I think sense I'm getting at the provincial level is that there's a lack of realization how much we are picking up because of the province not stepping into their area of responsibility. I think we need to really build that strong case of advocacy that we can approach and continue to do the part that we need to do.
I would agree.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. So we are, and I'll take the chair back.
Back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. And, okay, there's no more questions, so anyone to speak or to close? Councillor Tang? you want to close, but I do want to say a few words. It is important that we continue. And Councillor Rice, can you take the chair back? Sorry for this. Just you know, we need to do this. We need to do this because our fellow Edmontonians need this support. They're living on the street, struggling because they don't have a safe place to go to. In this case, not having enough space places to, even during the daytime, let alone at the nighttime. But having said that, this is not municipal responsibility. This is clearly the responsibility of the provincial government. And we have, like, we've been here for about 6 months now. I have spent more time on thinking about what we need to do and the advocacy we need to do to end houselessness crisis in our city, to end the opiate pandemic, the poisoning pandemic, and why we need to invest in harm reduction, why we need to think about safe supply, and why we need to invest and advocate for support of permanent housing. I'm glad that province is listening to us on other issues, the 4 bare minimums that we put together during the budget. I'm glad that we got money for downtown recovery. I'm glad that we are moving ahead on transit funding negotiations to fund the shortfall. I'm glad that they showed up for FIFA. But they haven't really realized how important it is for them to show up, to help people heal, for people to get better and be treated, and provide them the necessary support and the support of housing and the recovery and harm reduction and everything else that is necessary. And I think we need to continue to remind them. We need to continue to remind them this is their responsibility. We are picking up the pieces. But this is because of the lack of investment. And I hope that people are listening out there. If they do pay attention to our council meetings, right? And I hope that when they listen to that, they listen to our plea. Listen to our plea for help on behalf of Edmontonians, because people are dying every day on our streets because of these lack of investments from the province. And we will continue to do what we can, but we will never fix this problem on our own. We need province to step up, and we will do what we can to ensure that they do step up. So with that, I'll take the chair back, and I'll go to Councillor Tang to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your words. I'll be brief. You know, when the last time when I visited, I was actually extremely worried about what's going to come May 1st. And one of the things I've heard loud and clear from the frontline workers is the importance of relationship building that has stemmed from the extended hours at the center, from the outreach that they're doing on the streets, from supporting people, you know, from a very person-centered way, of course. And that matters when it comes to supporting people where they're at in terms of getting folks, you know, on the path to recovery or meeting their needs wherever they're at. And I guess, you know, back to Councillor Jansen's point earlier, you know, it's not enough, the 1.8 million, but it is a reprieve. And I also heard from the frontline workers loud and clear that this is the worst they've seen during the time that they've been working in this role. And that's a theme I'm hearing consistently, not only from the frontline workers, but from businesses in downtown, from you know, the communities in the surrounding areas, including Chinatown. And you know, thank you for your, you know, strong words on, you know, the provincial input, Mr. Mayor. It's not a nice to have collaboration opportunity, it's a must have. And we can't keep receiving this responsibility, and it's just simply not sustainable from, for everyone to take this load. But, I think it's important that the city right now, step in where it's needed, and we continue to push that conversation. I know there's various opinions about what is the right solution when it comes to houselessness, when it comes to drug addiction and overdose, and I think we need it all. And I think this piece for today for Bissell, for that day operating, is an important part of that conversation. So thank you for continuously working in this space to your team. And I look forward to, the team there has shared some really impactful numbers in terms of how city dollars and the impact they generated. And I look forward to hearing more about it and continue to see that impact translate not only to the center itself, the physical location, but to the neighborhood, to the area, and to downtown overall. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. I'll call the vote. Please vote.
Give all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And on bylaws, we dealt with all of them.
Point of order.
Sorry.
I have a subsequent.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Rutherford.
I tried to click in, but it wasn't letting me click in.
No worries. Go ahead.
Okay. So I do have a subsequent related to this item in terms of homeless serving and even, I think, opportunities within day use spaces. So my motion is that city administration explore, in collaboration with homeless serving agencies and Alberta Health Services, the possibility of providing drug checking programs and report back with any options to implement such a program to Community and Protective Services, September 2022.
You have the wording. Can we just put?
I'm waiting for a second.
Here we go.
Sorry, second.
Councillor Stevenson. Okay.
Yeah. So just to introduce.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
We're dealing with an opioid crisis, and one thing that's been struck by me is that we don't really have any. In many of our homeless serving agencies, we don't have any drug checking services, which are a proven and effective and easy and cheap harm reduction strategy. And so we're talking about people dying on the streets, and this is absolutely something that can prevent that. So for those that don't know what drug checking is, it means that in a confidential and safe way, people can bring in drugs, have them assessed to make sure they're not contaminated with opioids, and prevent that. So I don't know what could come out of it. I don't know what that discussion will look like, but I do think that it's a conversation we need to have. Other jurisdictions across Canada have really strong and robust drug checking programs that are, again, proven to save lives. And so I think it's time that we start to explore that, and I would take any questions from my colleagues if they have any about this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. I see no questions. I will call the vote.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
Sorry, anybody, people lining up to, just didn't see anybody there. Here you go, Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and really appreciate this motion. I think this is incredibly important. I guess I was just wondering, mentions in collaboration with homeless serving agencies, AHS, to the mover, do you feel that there is room for collaboration with some of the organizations in the mutual aid space? I'm thinking of groups like Boots on the Ground as well.
I mean, I would classify those as homeless. Are you saying they're not official organizations?
Well, and maybe
agencies?
to administration, is the intention to collaborate with those groups as well?
Councillor Salvador, I think what Councillor Rutherford's asking for, the way that we're interpreting it, is like an information report that provides information about who may currently be providing those services and also options that might exist for implementing a program. So we would be comprehensive in that report and mention anyone that is involved in that currently.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I know some important work is going on in that space as well. So thank you so much, and very happy to support this. Thanks again for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to ensure that it would be, include not just the drug testing for the homeless, but also others in our community that may need the services as well. So would that be included in the overall scan?
Yes, Councillor Wright, we will include any drug testing programs that may exist currently in Edmonton, although to be honest, I don't think that there are any formal ones, but we would include that, and any information about what a program might look like from other jurisdictions or something, we will be exhaustive in the information that we provide within reason.
And so accessibility for everybody, I guess?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I totally support.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting this, but just for clarification, and any members of the public watching, the city actually has absolutely zero jurisdiction over this. This is 100% a provincial responsibility. And yet another instance, Mr. Mayor, that you were speaking about how bizarre it is that our municipality is stepping in to do provincial work. But I do support the spirit of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Anyone else before I go to Councillor Rutherford to close? I see none. Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, thank you so much, and I would really appreciate the support on this motion. As mentioned by Councillor Paquette, I'm fully aware that this is, and that's why AHS is listed in this as a partner at the table. I think it's time to really advocate for and have that conversation further with AHS around this. And but yes, we can't. This is an example of that. Similar to what Councillor Knack said with the last motion. It's what's the moral obligation, what's the right thing to do, and when we are in an active opioid crisis, I think we should try to use every tool at our disposal. And so while I recognize the jurisdictional fuzziness and gray lines of this, I think there's a moral obligation to at least explore what, if anything, can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. All right. Okay. Now we are going into motions. Do we go to motions pending next, or do we go to private reports, Madam
We can
Clerk?
do your motions pending if you
Motions
like.
pending, okay. I know Councillor Principe sent me a note last night.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I do actually, sorry, my apologies. I think there was a request that I didn't bring forward to have 9.1 be the next item because you, yeah.
Okay, sir, there was
I can move that we bring 9.1 forward.
Okay, Councillor Councillor Stevenson moved it, Councillor Tang seconded to bring 9.1 forward. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote to bring 9.1 forward.
Councillor Jans? We're good to go.
Display the votes, please.
I'll move we go in private subject.
Display the votes. No, you go. Councillor Hamilton, go ahead. It's carried. Yeah.
I'll move we go in private subject to sections 21, disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Rice. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes. That is carried. We'll give you a couple of minutes to make sure only the people who
back in public?
Yeah. It's got to get 30 seconds for.
We're back in public.
We are back in public. Now, Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
I'll move receipt of information of 9-1, and it remains in private pursuant to sections 21 and 24.
Need
Second.
a second by Councillor Rice. Any questions to receive this for information? I see none. Please vote.
I'm a yes.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We have all the votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the votes, please. That is carried, and we will resume back our meeting on April 6th at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. See you, everyone.